Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. Today I'll be reviewing a Masterverse figure, something I've not done in a little while. And you can see that this is the brand new deluxe version of Duncan, the Man-at-Arms. Of course, this is from Masters of the Universe Revelation, the Netflix series. And this portrays Duncan in the flash forward that happens after the first part of the story, where we see that he's older and a little more down on his luck. And if you've not watched that series yet, make sure you do so, because there's some really good stuff, particularly pertaining to Man-at-Arms. So there's going to be two different modes we can put this figure into, and we're going to be having a look at those. And of course, we're going to be checking out this bevy of accessories. Since it is a deluxe release, it is a little pricier than your standard. Again, more terrific artwork. We now know that they're going to be doing an art book full of this stuff and the Origins art, so I'm very excited about that. This is a Target exclusive. If you need help finding it, here's the barcode or UPC right here. And the packaging is practically identical to every other deluxe that they've done, with Masterverse on the top and the strange decision to put the barcode. I think the only regrettable thing about the packaging is you can't see this incredible art piece on the front. So much of their best artwork gets put on the sides of the boxes. And I know that sometimes that is how some of this stuff gets stocked, but you're just not going to see this very often. So I'm really glad the art book is coming so that we can see these a little more closely. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get him out of the box. And here he is, Duncan, in his years later attire from the show. And he's definitely in this kind of rougher look with a big cloak, and he's down to just regular, more like civilian clothes, especially because at this point in the show, he's no longer the Royal Man-at-Arms, so he's kind of just living on his own. And I think that they've done a spectacular job of capturing this look with the figure. I mean, essentially, this is sort of his Ronin look, or Ronin attire, wandering warrior. And I think it's really great. They've even went so far as to have the little rips and the tears on the cloak at the bottoms there, and usually that's something you wouldn't get with something like this. And it's very precisely done, too. Also, just from a styling standpoint, at the factory there must have been some more complex operations happening to get the cape and cloak folded the way that it needed to be to get this effect. I know that I've seen people complain online that once they undid the cape, that they couldn't hardly get it back into the arrangement that it was in when it came packaged. So it makes me wary of even trying that. And I think it goes a long way in giving it that kind of lumpy look that you necessarily don't get with 6 and 7 inch figures that ends up giving it away as soft goods. And this does a very good job of selling it as it's like a full scale soft goods item. And I think the Masterverse designers have done an excellent job of making sure that when they use soft goods, it's restrained by belts and different kinds of mechanisms to shape it, and it ends up not falling into a lot of those pitfalls that we see from so many products that use that. To me, the mark of a really, really special Masters Deluxe figure is if it has two different kind of display and play modes, and this definitely fits that bill. We'll look at this first one a lot more closely. I really do like all of the complex sculpting that we have, and you can see the collar of the shirt there. You can see all the different types of sculpting and texturing work that's been done. And there's even a complex kind of sash and belt piece right there that looks really good. He's even got a pouch right around, and it continues onto the back. This is removable right here, so you can totally take this whole thing off, and we'll look at that here in a minute. Also, the sleeves are really nice. A little bit of strange plastic separation right there, but that can be easily sanded away. I think the transition is pretty decent between the wrists and the bare arms right there. Sometimes that's a little awkward. It's not perfect here, but I think it's all right. I also like that they even went to the trouble of painting things like this big patch on his pants, and they do have these painted, the kinds of fabric pieces that are wrapped around the boots. Usually that's the kind of stuff that doesn't get painted. So I think there were some reasons like that this was deluxe. It's also worth pointing out that this head sculpt, which is just spectacular, it's a perfect representation of the animation. It even goes to the trouble of having like gray in the temples and in the beard and the exact right locations. They also have the man bun and the mullet, like just perfect. And the beard looks really good. Also, I'm very impressed with the application of the tamper-graphic eyes here. And they've done some really nice airbrush kind of shading. I think it's a little shiny. It's kind of hard to perceive here on camera, but you can kind of see my studio light shining into it. That could be easily fixed with like a little matte spray. I think the shininess would have been good on the eyes and the lips, but not so much on the beard and things, because it ends up giving kind of a wet look. But like I said, easily fixed. If it really bothers you, it doesn't bother me so much. From the back, here is the cloak, looking very impressive. You can see that the mullet kind of holds down some of that and gives the illusion that there is like a fully functioning hood back here. But the truth is, I tried it and kind of pulled it out a little bit, and it was just taking excess pieces of the fabric and kind of putting it over the head of the figure, so it didn't really look like a hood once you did that. It does kind of feel like this is all being tentatively held on here and in this particular style. And I don't know, I think the messier it is, I think the cooler it looks. I just think it looks more in scale, the more folds and bends and things you have in it. So I'm just really pleased with how the soft goods came out here. But as you can see behind the figure, there's a whole cache of weapons and costume accessories. So that's going to be fun, I think, just changing that out. All right, so first things first, we'll want to take his shoulder pad here. All we'll do is we'll just take that and slide it up, and voila. You can see that it just goes right over that bicep there, and it's really large. If you want it to be lower, you can definitely slide it down lower, but it doesn't hold on. So it's definitely meant to go over the bicep so that it'll actually, you know, adhere to the figure. Of course, some of the less exciting stuff is just like the boot covers down here. This does have latches in it, and you can see those little straps. And just take those off. This one goes on this side with the latch attach points on the inner part of the leg. All right, and that was less painful to apply than I thought it would be, and actually looks nice and flush against the leg. That was a concern that I had. Second verse, same as the first, and that one looks nifty as well and fits just as well. Then right over here we have the new arm cannon. I think you do need to switch out the hand, because this is a good time to mention he does come with a right and left grabbing hand right here. So we just plug that in, and then take the bigger part that goes over the bottom of the sleeve there. Now with this strap, you'll just want to put it into the open hand so that he can kind of hold that strap like an accessory or a weapon. And they even did the red paint application. I think the next step is going to be getting this scarf off right here, because it's not going to fit the chest piece on if we leave the scarf. Okay, take the head off first. And you can see all the inner workings, and this is for anybody who's undone it and you can't figure out what to do to get it back. This hopefully helps you a little bit. I don't know if it will. I am going to have to unbuckle his current sash to make this work. Okay, this comes off, and you can see that it doesn't look half bad to just have it down to the brown part right there. This part goes right over, and you can see that on the back we just want to reattach the belt. Now I do think that this armor does set over top of the cloak and cape piece, so before you latch it, just make sure everything is straightened out to your liking. And the final piece is the new head sculpt. And we have Duncan fully transformed into the configuration we see him in for the second half of the Masters of the Universe Revelation series. I've always really loved this look, and I was stunned by it. I always thought this was just a terrific look for Man-at-Arms. It kind of barbarians him up a little bit so that he looks a little more sword and sorcery and not so much of just like a Star Wars kind of sci-fi guy just marching around with He-Man. If you want to, you can put the cape over the armor like this and just have it go under the head, but it ends up looking kind of weird. It kind of just bunches up and it's too big back there. I kind of like it when it's more controlled by the armor, even though it's kind of tough on the armor because it's having to keep it all inside. It looks a little more natural than all of this. Almost looks like he's taken a quilt and just put over him. So I like the other way. And if you would rather, you can of course just go without the cape completely, but I think it takes away a lot of the identity of the figure. Now he does come with this one gigantic cannon right here. And here he is, Man-at-Arms with his cannon fully suited up in his armor. I think this is a terrific look. It's very striking. As a matter of fact, I think you put this on the shelf and it's going to get attention right away. Even, you know, distracting a little from some of the other figures because it is just so fantastic looking, and it's a real step up from what they were able to do at the beginning of this line. This really does represent an evolution as they continue to go further and further towards something a little more impactful, a little more adult collector oriented. And at the beginning of this line, It was very much promoted, but the truth is this one does definitely earn that title, feeling more like a Figma or Figuarts kind of release with all the different pieces and interchangeable parts for a fraction, a true fraction of that price. I believe he's $32, $33, which in the current market is fantastic considering that's the price that some basic Hasbro figures have went up to in the last little bit. So it does retain its value. And of course we know that Target has lots of sales a lot of the times that includes their exclusives, especially some of their deluxes and things. So I think that that's definitely something that you'll see happen. Do I encourage you to wait for a sale? No, don't wait for a sale. Go ahead and get this guy. This is really, really fun. The more we just wait around on sales and things like that, I know that sometimes we have to, but it doesn't send the best message to retailers and things. So I definitely think that if we want this line to keep going, we need to be buying it. If it's your thing. If it's not, don't worry about it. Let's talk just a little bit about mobility when he's in this mode, because I think the other, you know exactly what to expect, but it's far more interesting to talk about what he can do when he's got all the armor on and everything. Right away, the legs are a little hampered by this loincloth, and of course you can maneuver it around it. And thank goodness the hips on all these Masterverse figures feel so much better than they used to. Because used to you would be afraid to even pull them up like that because they would like rip them or warp them on the inside, but they fixed that so early. Of course you do have that area to kind of work with. You have rotation at the hips. You do have double jointed knees, which are really strong and work really well. You do have all kinds of a range of motion at the ankles, and there's even a boot cut behind this boot cover right here. So all of that works really well. The arms, I have a little bit of a concern, and it's not to do with range of motion because it actually, even this one over here, you would think that it couldn't do any to the side, but thanks to there being a little room up there, you're able to get a little bit. And of course, this one can go all the way to 90. But here's the thing. Neither one of the double joints on these arms are particularly strong, but especially this one over here doesn't have much plastic resistance at all. So let's say you try to hold up this cannon right here, and I'll show you. He just kind of flops back over. Of course, I can fix that easily with the furniture polish trick or the super glue trick, but it's kind of aggravating that there's not enough joint tolerance in there. And I think it's the fault of that top joint right in there. So there's just not enough plastic in the mold. Something just isn't quite creating the friction it needs to hold. I will say that there aren't any pins on anything. This is a completely pinless figure. And Hasbro is always making a big deal and talking about that with their Marvel Legends figures. And I think people just kind of take it for granted on a lot of the Revelation figures, a lot of the Masterverse figures. And it should be something that we hype up too because it's a big deal. But yeah, the articulation works pretty well, really, all things considered. One extra weapon that he does have in terms of an accessory is this shoulder-mounted cannon right here. And this just actually opens up. It was such a cool surprise to realize, oh, this thing can actually like hinge open like that. And you can see the little divots in there where you would actually have rays, coming out. And what's interesting is this is completely removable. So you can just unpeg it right there and it's like nothing was there. Now, why would you want it to be removable? Well, it's simple. So that you can take the cannon and mount it right over the shoulder and then have the crosshair section to where you can put over his eye. Now, to do this can be a little cumbersome, but if you get it just right, you kind of see the intention, even if the floppy arm down here really does make it aggravating to do. Like I said, a little bit of a typical stuff I have to do to reinforce joints and things, and it should be fine. But at the same time, it's kind of aggravating. I also think it's interesting that right here we have this giant gaping hole in the front of the cannon, and that tells me that there was supposed to be some kind of effect piece, and it just didn't cost out. And that's a real shame because I think that it definitely needed a big blast effect. Even the artwork on the back shows a giant blast effect coming out of the gun. So yeah, I think that they definitely missed a trick there. It would have been great to have had something like that, I think, to have bolstered the figure. In terms of production, aside from the floppy kind of arm joint right there, the only other slight issue I even had was just a bit of stray paint right there. Kind of hard to see, but a little bit of stray blue metallic that in certain lights looks darker than it actually is. I can easily, remove that. I definitely want to show you the original Man-at-Arms that we got from the beginning of the series, just so that you can see. And of course, I'm sure all these parts are interchangeable and completely swappable in terms of the armor and also the heads. So it's a fine figure, you know, and it still is, really. And definitely at the time, I looked at it and said, okay, well, you know, this is a legitimate Masters figure right here, and had really leaped above and beyond what the Skeletor and the He-Man had been. It's also important to note that there are no reused pieces here. None of the armor is the same, not even the chest armor is the same, even though it has such a similar look because it has a new ab section that goes around a belt and all that. Shoulder section's completely different, weapons are different, a holster arm thing is different. So there's nothing shared between these two figures, which is fantastic when you're thinking about this and trying to get like a unique figure without all sorts of reuse in the parts. You're getting a good value here, I feel, because it would have been easy just to have reissued the same figure with extra parts, which is initially what I thought that was their intention. But boy, oh boy, is it not. I guess you could take that first head and just pop it right on. And it looks really good this way. However, I just think the eyes are a little odd on that first release, so I really like the other head sculpt. Of course, you can do the inverse as well and just have Duncan with the unmasked head in his classic armor, which is really nice. And even better, you can have a classic bearded Man-at-Arms because the helmet is, I'm pretty sure, exactly the same from the first release. But this time, of course, he has the facial hair. And just for fun, you know, my personal favorite line still, I think, is Masters Universe Classics, although with these new Revelations releases and Origins releases, it kind of erodes my confidence in that statement all the time. So, of course, I would love to see Mattel get to a place to where, you know, that just wasn't the case anymore. Here we go. I just kind of kitted together this Man-at-Arms from some extra armor to make him more 2000X-like, and this is the alternate, you know, ponytail head, which I think is appropriate for this one. And you can see that in terms of scale, in terms of height, they're extremely similar. This guy's a little more bulky, but it's not that far off, and his head's bigger. And of course, in the Revelation figures, the heads are always kind of small because that's the stylization of the show.
Which was the style at the time.
And just cause, here's the CGI He-Man from Masterverse, who I guess by virtue of him being a kid, you know, he's a little shorter, even though I think He-Man should be like, you know, 7 feet tall in that show. If you want to create some of the more dramatic moments of the show, here he is with his ultimate love, the Sorceress. Scale-wise, it's great. I think from a character standpoint, they look nice together as well. Well, guys, that will do it for my review of this brand new Deluxe Masters Universe Revelation Masterverse Man-at-Arms Duncan figure. This is, as far as I know, it's a Target exclusive. Thanks to Target partnering with Mattel on so many of these releases, it has allowed us to get much more, I think, intricate releases than we probably would have. And I really do appreciate Target's confidence in the brand. I think without them, a lot of these lines wouldn't have been as cool. We wouldn't have gotten as quick a distribution on a lot of these things. And so I appreciate their confidence in the brand. It does mean a lot to me as a fan and keeps me coming back to Target. Whether or not you want this figure is going to depend greatly upon your experience with Masters of the Universe Revelation. For me, I had a great experience with the show, and you know, you can leave your angry comment down below, I guess. But I had a great experience, so of course I'm going to pick up this figure. Had nothing but a good time with it. Thought it was awesome. I think a lot of other people did as well. Of course, it's coming back for another season. But I also think that even if you hated that show for whatever reason, that I think that you would do well to look at this and be like, you know, wait a minute, that's a really cool Man-at-Arms figure, because this is awesome. I think you could have all the problems in the world with Revelation and still look at this and just see what an incredible, you know, work of art that this figure is. And for $32, $33, having as many accessories as it does and it being as functional as it is really just fantastic. So it is a budget-priced premium figure, and I like that space in collecting, and I feel like that we don't get enough good stuff in that space. That's certainly kind of what we focus on this channel. Well, friends, I surely do thank you for watching today. I know I've had a great time reviewing this figure for you. And of course, let me know down in the comments below, will you be picking this guy up? Is this the kind of thing that appeals to you, or are you just strictly a Origins kind of collector and you don't really fool with the Masterverse stuff. Maybe you strictly avoid a whole lot of the Revelation themed stuff. Either way, let me know down below. And it's with a very hearty recommendation for this figure that I sign out, and have a great day. God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out. But